Do you remember the moment you stopped recognizing yourself? Not because your face had changed, not because your voice had faded, but because something deeper, something sacred had quietly slipped away from your soul, and no one noticed. Not even you. Until it was too late. There was a moment in 2020 maybe for you. It was a quiet night staring at a dark screen. Maybe it was a birthday spent in silence. Maybe it was the third missed call from someone you loved, and suddenly you realized you had disappeared. Not from the world, but from your own reflection. You, Leo the lion, the sun bearer, the one who never fades, suddenly became invisible, not to others, to yourself. And here's the truth no one dared say back then. You died. Not physically, not symbolically, but energetically, spiritually. The Leo the world once knew, bold, charismatic, magnetic, was taken away. And no one came to mourn. No funeral, no ceremony. No one even knew what you were going through. But I know, because I've seen it before. And I'm here to tell you something no one told you when it mattered most. That death was not the end. It was the beginning of something unimaginable. Because Leo, you were not buried. You were planted, and what rose from that darkness is no longer seeking the light. It is the light. The fire that burned you in 2020 was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to forge you. And today, finally, we speak of what truly happened. Because if you don't understand the sacred death you went through, you'll never understand the power you now hold. And you do hold it, Leo. You've just forgotten how to feel it. But after this video, that changes. Because today we remember your death so that you may finally claim your rebirth. Let's begin. Part 1, the ego death. What 2000T took from Leo. Before we speak of power, we must speak of the loss. Because what Leo lost in 2020 was not just time, comfort, or opportunities. It was identity. It was the moment you realized you were no longer being seen, no longer being recognized, no longer being reflected. And if you're Leo, this wasn't a small thing, because your very sense of existence had always been mirrored through others, their love, their praise, their attention, their admiration. Suddenly, it was all gone. And you weren't ready for what that would feel like, because for the first time in your life, the light turned off, the spotlight disappeared, and you stood there in the silence, not knowing who you were without it. That silence was not peaceful, it was existential. For most people, 2020 was a global crisis. For Leo, it was something even more personal. It was ego death. Not arrogance, not pride. Ego death is when your entire sense of self is dismantled. Your titles stop mattering, your roles fall apart, your performances lose meaning, and you're left with a terrifying question: who am I when I am not being seen? This is not the kind of death people talk about openly. There's no funeral for it, no name to give it. No one calls to say they're sorry, because they don't see it happening. But it happened to you. You felt it in your chest. You felt it in your voice. You felt it in your silence. You were grieving something you couldn't explain, and no one knew. Because you're Leo, and the world expects you to shine no matter what. But in 2020, you couldn't. You tried. You posted, you spoke, you smiled. But something inside you knew it was different. The energy didn't return. The fire didn't rise. The mirror stayed blank. Because the audience had left. And without them, you didn't know how to be. That's when the real death began. The death of who you thought you were. The version of you built on praise. The version built on applause. The version that only existed when others looked your way. And when the world stopped looking, that version collapsed. It was painful. It was quiet. It was invisible. But it was real. And it changed everything. Because what you lost wasn't just attention. It was a version of yourself that had always depended on the external. Now it was time to find something else. Something deeper. Something unshakable. And that could only happen when everything else was stripped away. You didn't ask for that, but you survived it. You didn't plan for it, but you endured it. And now, years later, you are not the same. Because when the lights went out, something else lit up. Something no one could see, but that you could finally feel. And that was the beginning. Life lesson from this part. Sometimes life has to take everything away from you, not as punishment, but as preparation. When the world stopped reflecting who you were, it gave you a rare chance to discover who you truly are. And what you learned in that darkness is something most people will never have the courage to face. You are not your audience. You are not your image. You are not who others expect you to be. You are the fire behind the performance. the soul behind the spotlight, the light that doesn't need permission to shine. That's what 2020 took from you, the illusion, and in its place you began to find the truth. This was the start of your real transformation. Part 2. Leo and the addiction to external light. Leo is the sign of the sun, the brightest, the warmest, the most generous. But here's what many people don't understand. Even the sun can become addicted to its own reflection, not because it's vain, not because it's shallow, but because it forgets that its light doesn't come from the sky, it comes from within. Leo, for most of your life, you've been a magnet to people, to praise, to admiration, to roles that put you at the center. It's not something you forced. It's something that happened naturally. You walked into a room, people noticed. You spoke, people listened. You loved, people followed. And slowly, without realizing it, you began to build an identity around that reaction. You told yourself, this is who I am, the one people admire, the one people celebrate, the one who lights up the space. But what you didn't realize was that you were building a palace of mirrors, each mirror reflecting back a version of you that was dependent on being seen. Not necessarily fake, but conditional. Conditional on applause, conditional on energy, conditional on being in motion. You were giving light, but you were also taking energy from how people responded. That's not shameful, that's human, and especially Leo. But it's also dangerous, because the more you need to be seen in order to feel alive, the more you lose access to your own core. And that's why 2020 was so devastating. Because in an instant, every mirror shattered. There were no stages, no events, no celebrations, no conversations, no cameras, no gatherings. Just silence. And in that silence, you came face to face with something terrifying. You didn't know how to feel real without the reflection. You didn't know how to feel worthy without the affirmation. You didn't know how to feel alive without the attention. And that realization was not humiliating. It was holy. Because it was the first time in your life you saw how deeply you'd given your power away, not to a person, but to a pattern. The pattern of outsourcing your worth, the pattern of borrowing your identity from the reactions of others. And in that moment, something deeper woke up. A voice inside you said, I can't live this way anymore. You didn't know what would come next. You didn't have a new identity ready, but you knew this. You would not keep chasing light when you were born to generate it. That was the shift, and it changed everything. This is what no one teaches us. Sometimes your greatest suffering isn't about what's taken away. It's about what's revealed when the world goes quiet. And for you, Leo, 2020 revealed a truth so few people have the courage to face. You had mistaken your reflection for your source. But now you know better. Because once you meet the part of yourself that exists without applause, you never go back to depending on it. Once you've walked through the fire of being unseen, you start to see yourself differently. And that's when true power begins. Not the power to attract, the power to stand without needing anyone to look. Not the power to charm, the power to exist even when no one claps. And that power, it's permanent. Life lesson from this part: if your self-worth depends on being seen, it will always be at risk. Because the world is inconsistent. People come and go. Praise fades, trends change. But when your identity is rooted in your own inner light, you become untouchable. The world can stop watching, but you won't stop glowing. That's the gift 2020 gave you. It cut the cord between your worth and their reaction, and in doing so, it reconnected you to your real power. Not the Leo who needs to be loved, but the Leo who loves themselves enough to no longer need the noise. That Leo is the one who can't be stopped. Part 3. 3 deacons of Leo. 3 deaths. 3 rebirths. Not all Leos experienced the fire of 2020 the same way. The ego death hit everyone, yes, but the way it burned, what it targeted, what it destroyed, depended on when you were born. Because Leo is not one single identity. It contains 3 ancient faces, 3 sacred cycles of fire, 3 phases of royal evolution. And if you understand your deacon, you understand why the pain felt so personal and why the rebirth was so uniquely yours. Let's walk through all 3. Death and rebirth, 1 July 23rd. August 1st. The fall of the role, the rise of the mission. You are the foundational Leo, the archetype most people picture when they think of the sign. Natural leaders, high energy performers, loyal protectors, the ones who define themselves by what they do and how others respond. Before 2020, you were always in motion. You built your identity through action. You found your power through responsibility, reliability, reputation. The world saw you as the strong one, the friend who always showed up, the manager who always delivered, the artist who never missed a beat. But in 2020, your function was stripped away, and for the first time, you weren't sure what to do. Because everything you had built your image on, your output, your position, your projects, was either paused or completely dissolved. You tried to stay useful, tried to be productive, tried to maintain control, but deep down you began to feel like a machine that had lost its power source. And here was the devastating realization: you didn't know how to exist without being needed. You had become so identified with your roles, leader, protector, producer, that when those roles vanished, so did your sense of purpose. But this death was essential, because you were never meant to only be useful. You were meant to be purposeful. And there's a difference. 2020 took away the stage of action so you could discover the mission beneath the movement. A mission not tied to output but to impact, not tied to performance but to presence. And slowly after the shock and silence, you began to feel a new kind of fire. Not the fire to impress, the fire to influence from the inside out. You stopped asking, "What can I do for them?" and started asking, "Who am I becoming?" Life lesson for this decan: you are not your job, you are not your role, you are not the energy you give to others. You are a mission in human form, and that mission doesn't disappear when the structure collapses. In fact, sometimes it only appears once the structure is gone. The fire you found wasn't about getting things done. It was about becoming someone the world needs with or without a title. Death and Rebirth 2, August 2nd, August 12th. The collapse of connection, the awakening of self-love. You are the heart-centered Leo, the romantic, the connector, the one who feels love as a lifeline. Before 2020, your sense of worth was deeply rooted in your ability to attract, connect, and be cherished. You were the best friend, the unforgettable partner, the one who glowed through intimacy, loyalty, and emotional presence. You didn't just enjoy attention, you needed emotional closeness to feel real. But when the world locked down and the distance grew and the people you once held close became distant, distracted, or simply unavailable, you felt yourself unraveling. This was the most painful kind of ego death, not a professional one, a deeply personal one. Because without hugs, laughter, shared dinners, midnight calls, affection, you felt like you were fading. You reached out, you texted first, you gave more than you had, hoping someone, anyone would return the love in the same way. But many didn't. Some disappeared entirely. And in that abandonment, you were forced to meet the one person you had never truly known, yourself. You cried alone. You remembered old wounds. You questioned your value. You asked, "Am I only lovable when I'm being loved?" That question changed everything. Because slowly, painfully, you began to build a new relationship, not with another person, but with your own soul. For the first time, you began to speak kindly to yourself. You began to stop chasing. You began to sit in silence and realize, I can love myself even if no one else is in the room. And that realization, it was liberation, not from love, but from dependence. Because now when someone chooses you, you know it's because you already chose yourself. Life lesson for this decan: you are not defined by how others love you. You are not made real through someone else's affection. You are lovable simply because you exist. And when you stop begging for love, you start attracting it in the healthiest way possible, not as a reward, but as a reflection of your own wholeness. Death and Rebirth 3, August 13th, August 22nd. The shattering of the hero image. The embrace of vulnerable power. You are the royal Leo, the visionary, the protector, the one who often takes on the identity of the savior. You didn't ask for the weight, but you carried it anyway. People looked up to you, expected you to know what to do, relied on your wisdom, your strength, your example. And deep down, you liked that. It gave you a sense of importance, of meaning. You told yourself, if I stay strong for everyone, then I matter. But in 2020, everything collapsed and you couldn't save anyone. Not your team, not your family, not even yourself. And for someone like you, someone who had built their entire image on competence, control, leadership, and strength, that collapse felt like failure. You didn't just feel broken, you felt exposed. Like the world had finally seen that beneath the lion's mane there was a scared, confused, tired human being. And that terrified you. Because for so long, you believed that your worth came from being invincible, but now you had to admit you were human too. And this, more than anything, was the beginning of your healing, because it was the first time you stopped performing power and started living truth. You allowed yourself to fall apart. You admitted that you didn't have all the answers. You let go of the armor. And you discovered something revolutionary. Vulnerability didn't make you weak. It made you relatable. It made you real. It made you powerful in a completely new way. People didn't need you to be perfect. They needed you to be present. Life lesson for this deacon: your strength does not come from never falling. It comes from rising with your humanity intact. You are not here to be worshipped. You are here to walk beside others with courage, humility, and heart. And when you lead from that place, not as the hero above, but as the soul beside your impact becomes timeless. Closing reflection for all Leos: 3 deaths, 3 fires, 3 rebirths. Each one stripped away a different layer of illusion. Each one returned you to something real. And while the process may have looked different, the outcome is the same. You are no longer the Leo you were. You are more. Not in appearance, not in applause, but in depth, in wisdom, in inner light. And now you're ready for the next chapter. Not the one the world expects, but the one your soul has been waiting for. Part 4, the return, but not as you were. When people speak of healing, they often imagine a return to normal. But you, Leo, did not return to normal. You couldn't. Because the version of you that once fit into the world so easily, the version built on validation, energy, admiration, applause, no longer exists. And here's the truth no one prepared you for. Coming back after an ego death is harder than anyone realizes. Not because you're broken, but because the world still expects the old version of you. The smiling one, the entertaining one, the always confident, always available, always shining one. But now, when people reach for that version, they find someone quieter, someone deeper, someone not as eager to perform. And that confuses them. It unsettles them. Because they don't understand what you've been through. They don't know what burned. They don't see what had to die. They just want their familiar Leo back. But you're not here to be familiar anymore. You're here to be true. So what happens now when you re-enter the world, but you're no longer playing the same role? You speak less, but mean more. You give less, but it's richer. You show up, but not to entertain. You show up to be present fully, genuinely, unapologetically. And that change unsettles those who were only comfortable with your performance. So yes, the return is lonely at times, because you no longer fit in the rooms where you once held center stage. You no longer chase approval from those who don't recognize your worth. You no longer twist yourself to make others comfortable. You're done with that. Because the version of you that rose from the ashes has nothing to prove. Let them say you've changed. Let them miss the old you. Let them whisper that your light has dimmed. They don't know that it's no longer a firework. It's a star. And stars don't need to flash. They just endure. You may be quieter now, but you're also steadier. You may be less visible in certain spaces, but you're more powerful in your own. You've traded noise for peace, crowds for connection, performance for truth. And what you've gained in return is a kind of sovereignty no applause could ever give you. So the return isn't a comeback, it's a rising, not to the stage, but to your soul's true throne. And if the world doesn't understand it yet, that's fine. They will. Because those who still crave the old version of you were never meant to walk with the reborn version anyway. You didn't come back to be popular, you came back to be powerful. Not loud, aligned, not admired, anchored, not celebrated, centered. This is the Leo the world didn't expect, but the one the future desperately needs. Because in a world drowning in performance, your authenticity is revolutionary. And Leo, you didn't survive that fire just to go back to pretending. You came back to lead differently. Life lesson from this part: true healing isn't about becoming who you were before the pain. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be once all the masks have fallen away. You don't need to return to being the most visible. You need to return to being the most real. And when you do, your presence becomes a quiet revolution. Because nothing is more powerful than someone who knows exactly who they are and no longer needs the world's permission to be it. Part 5. What Leo had to let go to fully rise. Not every loss is a punishment. Some losses are sacred invitations, not to suffer, but to surrender. Leo, after the fire of 2020, you may have thought the hardest part was over. But the real challenge began when you tried to come back to life and found that much of it no longer fit. You tried to step back into the relationships you once held close. You tried to revive the energy you used to feel. You tried to speak the same language you once did. But something felt off, uncomfortable, misaligned, and maybe at first you thought it was you. Maybe you thought you'd changed too much. Maybe you felt guilty for not being who you were. Maybe you even tried to shrink back into that older version just to make people feel safe again. But every time you did something inside, you resisted. Not loudly, quietly, firmly. Because the truth is, you weren't meant to return to the old roles. You were meant to release them. And so began another silent fire, the shedding. You didn't just lose people, you let go of patterns. You didn't just outgrow spaces, you recognized the ways they once restricted you. And while no one tells you this part, it's important you hear it now. Letting go is not failure. Letting go is proof that you are alive. Because only something evolving knows how to release. Let's speak plainly now. There were people in your life who only loved the version of you that performed, that shined for them, that gave endlessly, that made them feel special by dimming your own needs. Those people began to fall away, not because you became cold, but because you became clear. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped apologizing for your growth. You stopped feeding dynamics that drained you. And it hurt, because you didn't walk away with anger. You walked away with mourning. The quiet, private grief of someone who had to say goodbye to connections that no longer saw your truth. And beyond the people, there were places. Spheres where your name once carried weight. Rooms where you were once celebrated. Stages where you once gave everything. But when you tried to return to those spaces, something inside whispered, "This is too small for you now." Not in arrogance, in evolution. You realized that you had outgrown not just people, but purposes, passions, projects, entire storylines. And that realization came with guilt. How could you walk away from something that once gave your life meaning? But here's the truth, Leo. What gave you meaning at one stage of your life may become a cage in the next. And the lion doesn't stay in cages. So piece by piece, you released the need to be understood by everyone, the need to entertain when you were tired, the need to always be strong, the need to prove your worth through performance, the need to be liked at the cost of your truth. You stopped fighting to keep what you'd already outgrown. And that choice, though lonely at times, was a declaration. I choose growth over comfort. I choose truth over image. I choose peace over performance. The world may never applaud you for this. There will be no stage lights for the quiet, private acts of inner liberation. But this was the real turning point in your rebirth. Not the survival of 2020, but the willingness to walk away from everything that was no longer worthy of the new version of you. Life lesson from this part: letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You don't lose parts of your life because you failed. You lose them because you've become someone who no longer needs to pretend to fit where you don't belong. And the more you release, the more room you make for what is actually aligned with your soul. You are not here to cling, you are here to rise. And you cannot rise if you're still holding on to what only saw your shadow but never honored your light. Part 6. The new Leo leadership from authenticity, not ego. Before 2020, leadership for Leo often meant presence, a magnetic force, an irresistible gravity. You walked into the room and people followed. You spoke and your words carried weight. You performed and others were moved. It was natural, it was powerful, and for a long time it was enough. But after the fire, after the mirrors shattered, after the applause fell silent, after you were forced to meet yourself in the quiet, something shifted. You began to realize the version of leadership you had mastered was based on performance. And performance, no matter how inspiring, can become a mask. So you stepped back, not in defeat, but in awareness. You watched the world, you watched people. You noticed something you hadn't seen before, that many followed you not because they truly knew you, but because they were drawn to the shine. And when that shine dimmed during your ego death, some drifted away. That hurt. But it also revealed something sacred. You were no longer interested in being followed because you glowed. You were ready to lead because you had been through the dark. And that kind of leadership, not loud, not performative, not flawless, is what the world needs now more than ever. Because now you lead from somewhere deeper, not from elevation, but from embodiment. You don't need to impress, you need to be real. You You don't need to project power. You need to stand in truth. People used to follow you because you were untouchable. Now they follow because you are relatable. Before you led from confidence. Now you lead from clarity. Before you led with charisma. Now you lead with integrity. You no longer say, "Follow me because I have the answers." You now say, "Follow me because I've walked through the fire and survived. Because I lost myself and rebuilt. Because I don't just talk strength, I live it." And that is unshakable power. This is the rise of the authentic Leo. You don't roar to dominate anymore. You speak to awaken. You don't stand tall to be admired. You stand rooted so others can lean on you. You don't lead to be above. You lead to walk beside. Because the lion who has been through ego death no longer leads from ego. They lead from soul. And people feel that. They feel the difference between someone performing wisdom and someone who carries it in their bones. You don't just inspire now. You activate others. Not because you need them to follow, but because your light gives them permission to find their own. And that kind of leadership, it doesn't fade, it multiplies. Life lesson from this part. True leadership isn't about being followed. It's about becoming so deeply aligned with who you are that your very presence reminds others of who they are. You don't have to push. You don't have to perform. You don't have to chase influence. You simply embody truth, and the right people will feel it, respond to it, and rise with you. That's the kind of leader you've become. And no stage, no spotlight, no title can ever define or contain it again. Part 7. Leo's new mission, the power you were always meant to carry. There's a reason the old version of you had to die, and it wasn't just so you could feel pain. It was so you could finally carry the power you were always destined for. Because let's be honest, Leo, as strong, brilliant, and captivating as you once were, you wouldn't have been able to complete your true mission in that form. Why? Because the old version of you was still too entangled in image, too dependent on applause, too busy giving people what they wanted instead of listening for what the divine was truly asking of you. The Leo before 2020 had influence, but the Leo after 2020 has impact. The Leo before 2020 could lead a room, but the Leo now, you can shift the room with your presence alone. You've been entrusted with something sacred, and it didn't come as a reward for your charm or talent. It came because you survived something soul-breaking and chose to rise not bitter, but blessed. Not everyone comes back from that, but you did. And now, you carry a power that doesn't ask to be seen because it's busy seeing others. A power that doesn't need to dominate because it knows how to uplift. A power that doesn't need the center because it's become the source. This is the Leo who can't be manipulated by approval anymore because you've finally located your worth within. And now your mission is different. You're not here to shine so others can admire you. You're here to ignite others, to reflect their brilliance back to them, to make spaces feel more alive, more honest, more human, because you've walked through the fire and returned with wisdom in your eyes. You used to seek platforms. Now you build sanctuaries, safe spaces where others can drop their mask because you dropped yours first. You used to seek followers. Now you awaken leaders. You used to be driven by recognition. Now you're driven by responsibility. You don't crave the light anymore because you are the light. And from here forward, your life will no longer be about becoming someone important. It will be about doing something meaningful. Maybe it's in your family. Maybe it's in your community. Maybe it's in art or healing or activism or teaching or simply showing up for people in ways the old version of you never had space for. But whatever form your mission takes, know this. The universe didn't bring you through that fire for entertainment. It brought you through it for purpose. And that purpose isn't something you have to figure out all at once. It will unfold step by step as you keep walking in alignment. And alignment is the key. Not ambition, not hustle, not proving, just alignment. Because when you are true to yourself, the doors open. And the right people, the right moments, the right opportunities will rise to meet the real you. Life lesson from this part. The power you were born to carry can only be held by the version of you who no longer needs to be impressive, only true. Because your greatest impact will not come from being celebrated. It will come from being aligned with who you are, what you've been through, and who you're becoming. You didn't survive to go back to the old mission. You survived to step into the real one. And now, you're ready. Part 8, the final realization and your eternal rebirth. Leo, now that you've walked this journey back through your silence, your surrender, your fire, now that you've stood at the edge of your former self and chosen not to return to it. You can finally say this with clarity, without apology, and without fear. You were reborn in the fire, and nothing can stop you now. The world tried to define you by what you gave, by how you entertained, by how brightly you could shine for them. But God had something different in mind. He took away the mirrors. He silenced the applause. He broke the performance, not to punish you, but to free you. Because the truth is, you were never just here to be seen. You were here to see yourself, to find yourself, to remember yourself beneath the lights, beyond the roll, underneath the roar. And now that you've remembered, everything changes. You walk differently now. You speak from a quieter place, but with more weight. You attract not with show, but with soul. And those who find you now find not just a Leo, but a leader of light. You don't need the old applause, because your every breath is a drumbeat of presence. You don't need the old audience, because you've become your own witness. You don't need to return to the old stage, because you've become the cathedral. And those who are meant to walk with you, they'll find you here, not where you used to perform, but where you now simply exist in truth. This is your eternal rebirth, not the return to who you were, but the arrival into who you were always meant to be. And now I want to ask something of you. If these words spoke to something inside of you, something buried, something sacred, something still burning, claim your rebirth. In the comments, write this: I was reborn in the fire and nothing can stop me now. Because this isn't just about reflection, it's about declaration. It's about anchoring the truth inside your body, that you are no longer who you were, and you are never going back. You've crossed the threshold. You've passed the test. You've survived the death. And now, Leo, it's time to live. Not to perform, not to chase, not to convince anyone of your worth, but to live as someone who has already seen the end and chosen to begin again, braver, wiser, quieter, stronger. Let this video be your mirror. Not the kind that shows you who the world wants you to be, but the kind that reflects who your soul already knows you are. Subscribe to this channel, not just to follow content, but to stay connected to the parts of yourself you're still uncovering. Turn on the bell, because your second life deserves constant reminders of your real identity. And share this with another Leo, the one who's still lost in the ashes, not knowing yet that they too are about to rise. Because when one Leo remembers their light, others awaken. That's how we lead now. Not by shining alone, but by lighting each other. You were reborn in the fire, and now you shine from within. The world hasn't seen anything yet, and nothing can stop you now. If this message stirred something in you, not just as a Leo, but as a soul that has walked through the fire and chosen to rise, don't leave in silence. This space, this channel is not about entertainment. It's about remembrance. It's about helping you return to the power you were always meant to live from. So if you know you're not who you used to be, if you've let go of roles, masks, and mirrors that no longer reflect your truth, subscribe to Leo Zodiac Power. Because this isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a temple of transformation. A place where Leo souls like you come to reclaim their light, not to impress, but to illuminate from within. Hit the bell so you never miss the guidance your reborn self will need. This second life you've been given, it deserves reminders, reinforcement, and sacred community. You've already been through the death. Now let this be the place where you live from your rebirth. Subscribe and type in the comments, I was reborn in the fire and nothing can stop me now. Your tribe is already here, and your light is finally home.